Hey, welcome to That's Not Proper, and I'm your host, Corey Asuncion. The use of cannabis, today more specifically CBD, has been on the forefront of health and wellness now for several years. In the US, CBD sales are projected to grow around 107% annually through at least 2023. My guest today, Pia Barton, here to talk all things CBD, is not only a childhood friend, but also the founder and CEO of Malaya Botanicals, a CBD health and wellness boutique that is independently minority woman-owned and operated. Thank you, Pia, for coming on today.
Thank you, Corey, for having me.
Now, I know you're a little bit nervous. So we discussed this prior to beginning recording. Pia took her CBD gummy. I took a shot of tequila. We're all set.
Yes, we're ready.
Okay, let's just jump right in. Tell me how you actually began, venturing into CBD. What caused you to even start using CBD just as far as personal use?
So honestly, I didn't know about CBD. I knew about THC first. So my background is marketing. I'm a marketing consultant, and I was actually hired by a friend over 5 years ago to do the marketing for his delivery. And so at that time, so this was 2015, 2016, and I didn't know anything about cannabis. And so in order for me to market it, I had to learn it. So I ended up spending my first 3 years on the cannabis THC side up in Mendocino, doing the marketing for him for his delivery. At the same time, he was getting his licensing for a 40,000 square feet cultivation up in Mendocino. So he was going through the whole process of licensing, permitting, and this is even before it was legalized. And so he needed help. And so I started helping me with that. And so that's how I learned the process and ended up sitting on the board of director for Small Farmers Association and started helping the farmers initially with their marketing. But we saw that there was more need of helping them with the licensing and permitting, transitioning them over from basically the unregulated market to the regulated market. And so I did that for 3 years. And then I'm also an injured triathlete. I have sciatica from doing 15 years of triathlon and marathon and crazy stuff like that. And because I was on a cannabis side, I had access to THC, topicals, sublinguals, edibles. Unfortunately, my body, my tolerance just doesn't like it. And so, I wake up in pain and I would take THC and then I'm high and I can't function for the rest of the day. And I tried the topical. I guess my pain is just so severe, it doesn't even really do anything. And then 2 years ago, I discovered CBD. My friend said, "Well, why don't you try CBD?" I'm like, "What is this?" And so I tried it, and Corey, it just changed my life. And
Really?
I said, "What is this thing?" And so I started going to conferences, started talking to the educators that I met through the cannabis side. And honestly, my cannabis folks, when I told them I was switching over, they kind of gave me this look like, "Why? You're doing so well on the cannabis side." But I resonated more with it. And so when I found out more about CBD, I knew I had to tell everyone about it and bring it to market.
Let's talk for just a second, just to inform listeners who may not know, and honestly, even myself, when you're talking about cannabis, what is the difference between CBD and THC?
So a plant, whether it's cannabis plant or hemp plant, it has over 120 cannabinoids. And THC and CBD are the most popular. And there's CBG, there's CBN, and each cannabinoid has its own healing properties. And honestly, because it just became regulated or became legalized, all these years we couldn't do research. That's why there's not a lot of information still on all these cannabinoids. There's so much like the CBG or CBN helps you with glaucoma and helps you sleep. So THC is just a different cannabinoid and from CBD, and THC gives you the psychoactive effect and CBD doesn't.
So essentially then CBD is you're getting the benefit of the medicinal side of the plant for your body without the high. Is that
Correct.
correct?
Our body has endocannabinoid system,
Mm-hmm.
and its job is to create a homeostasis state or a balanced state. And so that's the part that receives the cannabis. So it binds with CB1 and CB2 receptors. So
Mm-hmm.
CB1 is head and it binds with THC. That's why it gives you the psychoactive effect.
Okay.
CBD is CB2 receptors in its body. And now I know why my body responded to CBD in regards to my pain, because my pain was, it's my whole body. So
Right.
now it makes
Okay.
sense. By the time I didn't know.
I know that there's the ability, or you could purchase CBD in different amounts, and it can have a little THC, it can have a little CBD, vice versa. My personal experience, I'm still learning. I personally struggle with THC. It makes me, quite frankly, a lunatic. I am super paranoid. My partner it's like his best friend, whereas I'm like it's my greatest enemy. So I personally can't really do THC, and so I'm trying to understand how the two CBD and THC work together when you have a little bit, and the types of CBD that you're talking about, or even within your boutique, Malaya Botanicals, do they sell? It's just CBD? Does it have a little CBD? How does that work?
Okay. So Malaya products, it's a hemp derived CBD. And
Okay.
so it comes from a hemp plant. The ones that you get from the dispensary is cannabis derived CBD. So the difference is that from hemp, the THC is lower. And this is why we can sell, it's federally legal. You don't need a cannabis license. The one that
Okay.
you get from the dispensary has a higher THC. And so there's still a lot of studies to be done, and
Mm-hmm.
it does change still. And so right now they're saying that having a full spectrum,
Okay.
meaning it has all of the cannabinoids from the plant, with the product, they work synergistically together, which makes sense, right? So because
Mm-hmm.
each one has its own healing properties. So now you have a product, you have full spectrum, you have all the cannabinoids, and they working synergistically together, and you consume it.
Okay.
And so on the hemp side, there's three kinds of CBD. So, or that's how terminology. So there's the
Mm-hmm.
full spectrum, there's the broad
Mm-hmm.
spectrum. So broad spectrum has all of the cannabinoids except for one cannabinoid. So they remove one cannabinoid. It's usually it's THC. And
Okay.
then CBD isolate, meaning it's just CBD. And so the broad spectrum is fairly new. I believe that came about a year ago. So they probably did that specifically for people who can't have THC in their system, due to work or for whatever
Okay.
reason. On
Mm-hmm.
the cannabis side, it's I mean same thing as full spectrum, but the levels there are different. So there's a sativa that's more an upper, indica is body and relaxes you, and in a different ratio. When you see
Mm-hmm.
like 1 to 1, that means there's 1 to 1 of CBD and THC. So you kind of have to find your own level that works for you. So this one of the, I would say, the one of the few things that advantage of being regulated. People,
Mm-hmm.
knowing that you can go to a dispensary, get that product, and you know what kind of experience you're gonna get because it's now measured. Whereas before, you get a
Mm-hmm.
brownie and you don't know
Yeah.
what you're
Yeah.
getting. So
Or when we were kids,
yeah,
it was just in a baggie or whatever.
yes, and you
We
don't
we
even
talk
know if
about
it's
that a lot.
weed.
Yeah. We talk about that a lot, the changes in the industry, and just in something as simple as a bud. Who knows what it was back then? And we talk about the difference between, a brown bag or whatever. And, what you have now and the strength, it's like a whole new world in comparison to what it was when we were teenagers.
For sure.
And like I said, personally, I can't really handle it. I think it has to do with being a little bit of a control freak sometimes. I notice I don't feel as in charge, or at least that's what I'm telling myself. So,
Mhm.
however, I will occasionally use, like, I have a couple vape pens that, like, one of them is a 2 to 1. And if I'm having some severe pain, I have a couple issues with some of it's just women's issues. Some of it, I have some knee and hip issues. And there are times where it shuts me down and I am in severe pain where I can't move. So I will take 1 or 2 hits off this vape pen. And within 15 minutes, the pain is almost completely gone. And 10 minutes after that, I am passed out, which is another reason why THC is not my friend, because I am not coherent. I'm just gone.
You're non-functional.
Whereas no, not at all. Whereas my partner, if he takes that same exact one, it's as if it's nothing. He has a crazy high tolerance. He also has a very reverse effect. And it doesn't matter, sativa or indica, which, by the way, I don't know if you know this already. I had to learn the difference between sativa and indica. And I'm like, I always forgot. What's the difference? Which one brings you up? Which one brings you down? And my girlfriend told me indica is in the couch.
Yes.
And I'm like,
exactly.
Oh, that's. So I'm like, okay, now I know when I'm reading whatever is purchased or little bottles or whatever. But anyhow, my partner, when he uses it at whatever it is, mostly he has a personal vaporizer, and he's like on cloud 9, talks 10 times more than he normally talks. And I think some of it has to do with the fact that he's in constant pain. And now he has none. He's been in constant pain since 2001 when he had a major fall. And so when he has that, he has zero pain, but he doesn't stop talking, where everybody else is like, he's like, and everyone's like, I thought this did the reverse. And I'm like, no, it doesn't matter what it is for him. This is what it does.
Funny how, it works differently for everyone. And it doesn't always work. Even now when sometimes people come in here at the store and they're like, it didn't work for me. And, they've tried different things. And so once, I kind of help them figure out the right dosage, it still doesn't work for them. And for some people, it really just doesn't, just like any medicine, right? Some people respond really well. Some people don't respond at all. So it depends if, our liver, it's metabolizing your liver. So it also depends on the functionality of your liver. Does it function properly?
That's actually good to know. That's not something I knew. So the function of your liver. So if you have a liver that maybe is struggling, that could potentially present an issue with how it works for you. I did not know that. Okay, that's good information.
Yeah. Like, how when people take medicine or antidepressant or any kind of those medication, they tell you to take it for 30 days at least, is because it takes our body about 2 weeks to receive medicine and respond to it, a minimum.
Right.
So, CBD is not any different.
You got to look at it the same way.
Yeah.
I think that's interesting too, because I think sometimes when we're considering CBD, I think a lot of people look at it as the same as THC, which has that, within a few moments or whatever it is, you have the high. Yeah. And so they're wondering why CBD doesn't create the same effect, with regards to maybe pain in the body. Something that maybe you can help explain to me a little bit, what I've understood with regards to CBD, and it's something like we're talking about right now, figuring out dosaging and things like that, is that it again, it's not an instant thing necessarily. It's not like you pop it. Although this morning you did say right before we went on, it helped calm you down. But does it take a time to build up to that? Do you notice that, hey, look, I've got to give this a couple weeks, a couple days, whatever it is, to actually really notice the differences? Say like you're someone who has anxiety. And so using something like this, are you going to notice it immediately when you first start using it, dependent upon the dosage once you get it right? Or is it something that takes a little while because it's got to work its way into your system?
Research shows that CBD just takes time. It's not something your body has to adjust to it. So what it is, basically your endocannabinoid system receives it, and it identifies what you are deficient with, what your body's deficient with, what you are imbalance. So CBD is basically helps with imbalance and inflammation, and also has anti-aging properties. So those are some of the main things that CBD is known for. And so, for instance, I started taking CBD, for my pain. My sciatica, the root cause of my sciatica is the inflammation. My body was just inflamed, and come to find out it's because of basically the 15 years of triathlon, like training hardcore, doing Tough Mudder, climbing Half Dome, doing all those things, thinking that, hey, and so now my body is reacting as I age. Got to a point where my hair, my inflammation started, my hair started falling out. And I
Mm.
believe that my fibromyalgia was also caused by that severe inflammation. So I was in a pain management program at Kaiser, and 5 of the doctors there all agreed that I needed to take 2,400 milligrams of ibuprofen every day because the inflammation was that bad. And I was like, I've done everything. And so I was taking that for 2 months before I started taking CBD, the tincture. So I figured I kind of started self-medicating because they didn't have a
Right.
plan. There was no end date, and it's just either that or surgery. And so I just kind of said, okay, well, I have inflammation issues. I'm taking 2,400 milligrams of ibuprofen, which is an anti-inflammatory. So CBD is anti-inflammatory. So let's just take it. So I started taking it, and I didn't know my dosage. I was playing with it. So I noticed that when I wake up, I was in less pain. So instead of taking my 4 for breakfast, I was like, okay, well, I'm going to take the 3 first, and if I'm still in pain, I'll take the additional 1. So it kind
You're
of
referring to the
started that way.
ibuprofen or the CBD?
Yeah. So I started taking the CBD, and I noticed that I started taking ibuprofen less and less. So within 30 days, I weaned myself completely off of ibuprofen. And
Wow.
I am happy to say I haven't taken ibuprofen in 2 years. And I was popping ibuprofen like before a workout, during a workout, every 10 miles, popping ibuprofen. Right after workout, do 2 or 3. I mean, I was finishing like a bottle of, I don't even know how my stomach, my liver, my kidney is doing right now, I'm sure.
Well, that was my next question is I know that ibuprofen, one of the first things I think that I notice if I'm taking a lot of ibuprofen for something is my stomach is, upset stomach kind of a feeling, just not feeling good. And I can't imagine taking it for that long. That's part of the reason my partner he won't take any of the opiates that they have prescribed to him for years now. And he doesn't like taking any of the medication, but like I said, he uses cannabis and it takes the pain away and he feels better. He's able to do things he was never able to do before. I mean, even just like physically, he does yoga now. He couldn't do yoga before. All of those things, it has made a huge difference. Now, with regards to all of this, what have you come up against as far as like misconceptions working in this industry?
There's that stigma, right? I mean, coming from remember how strict my parents were, and being a deacon's daughter, and even then, like even at the beginning when I first got into the industry, when I was around them, around the people who smoked, like I still kind of like internally, it's almost like it was still bad. Like it took me 3 years to kind of come out that I was in the cannabis industry. Like a lot of people don't know how deep I am into the industry, even to this day. Not just in the Bay Area, up in Mendocino and things like that, because I still, mentally, like I still it's still ingrained in me. It's bad, even though I know that it's not true. Like after doing all of the research, I'm actually mad. This is why I became an advocate, that this was not provided, to the people openly. It could have helped a lot of people, with cancer, with AIDS, and everything. And now it is, but then what about the people who suffer in the last, 30, 40 years? And so that became my advocacy, is to destigmatize cannabis, normalize it, and bring it out to the general market. And so that's what I do, is educate through education.
I understand that struggle, growing up. Part of it's the generation we grew up in, having parents that were strict and or religious, and, there's this stigma attached. I still struggle sometimes with the stigmas, and I am like, let's not tell the nation that these things occur here, although here I am on a podcast. But,
I know.
I'm
even
learning.
My mom said, it was like, who's going to hear this? And like, my mom is freaking out. And I'm like, everyone, Mom, like the whole world.
I have listeners in Egypt and India and China, so who knows? But it's that stigma that's attached to it. It's even interesting because there are times where I'll even say, well, CBD is not the same as THC because, you don't get the high. Because that's the thing that everybody gets weirded out about is the high. And so I even will find myself saying, well, I know that like this one's less bad or something like that. And
Hmm.
it is a hard stigma even within myself to get over because it's so deeply embedded since, very, very
Very
young.
much so. And honestly, Core, I am still battling. So when I
Mm-hmm.
first started, I mean, even now, so I can't have a business account because the banks won't let me. They still classify me as
Mm,
cannabis. I wasn't
okay.
able to take advantage of a lot of the grants and the loans when, it was given to, during the pandemic and to help out the business because I'm still classified. My processing, my payment processing, my insurance, it's like 5 times more because it's still cannabis. But why? This is why, like, I don't get. It's almost like cannabis is set up to fail. It's like, okay, government's
Mm,
like, okay, go ahead, you can do business, but these are your rules. But why aren't these rules the same as alcohol or even
right.
prescription medicine, pharmaceuticals?
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
so I get really upset that we're still treated this way. We get charged 40%, not us, but the cannabis side, 40% tax.
Right.
But, so these things is so when I first started doing events, they wouldn't let me. So I had to fight with the producers, like educate them. I had to provide them all this paperwork. It's like, look, why can't I do these events? Why can't I bend? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so at the beginning I kept fighting. In fact, I would be the only CBD vendor in festivals and things like that. And you know I'm proud to say that when I started in May of 2019 fighting and constantly educating about CBD, I was able to do 35 events from Memorial Weekend all the way to
Wow.
October of last year.
Wow. And most of those events are here in Northern California?
They're in Bay Area. So I did the Art and Wine Festival, Fillmore Jazz, Night Market. I name it, I did it. I did a lot of the Christmas holiday events at Airbnb, at Google. And so I definitely, but that took a lot of time. It wasn't like an easy thing. I had to prove myself. And why? So kind of brings back to this trauma that I have being a woman of color in the
Mm-hmm.
tech industry, real estate, having to prove myself.
Mm.
Why do I constantly have to prove myself? And sorry, it's a very sensitive
No,
topic.
no. Well, and it's understandably so. And, part of the podcast is bringing those topics to light because I think that it is prevalent. And, to be fair, I assumed you struggled with some of these things, but I don't know all of that. So I think it's important to hear that because we don't know what someone like you who's going into this industry is struggling with. And it's an industry that is out there different than pharmaceutical companies because they're out there for the dime. Whereas you're out there, obviously, you want to make an income, but you're also out there to tell people, hey, look, I'm actually healing from this. You can heal too. And without the permanent damage that a lot of these other pharmaceuticals are causing. Out of curiosity, what would you say were the first things that you noticed with regards to CBD and like your body? What was it that was like, this was a big difference? And I guess what I'm referring to is specific pain that, especially as women, and as we're aging, that we have that we definitely may not have expected to have 10, 15 years ago. What would you say are some of the biggest things that you would notice have had an effect for yourself?
I would say I'm definitely the pain. I mean, my not just in my lower back, but my whole body is just tight and sore. And I mean, to a point where when I sit down and I get up and I have to, like, it takes a few minutes to straighten up my back. Or
Mm,
just going to the bathroom. I mean, it's like walking. Like I'm 40 years old and I'm walking like an old lady. I went from
mm-hmm.
climbing mountains to I can barely go from one room to another. And so it was really depressing. Like it took a toll on me. And but I had to, basically take control of my health. So that's when I noticed that after taking the tincture, well, first the pain cream helped, right? I was like literally
Mm-hmm.
lathering the pain cream all over my body because that's how
Mm-hmm.
much pain I was. Okay, well, I can't really afford this. I'm
Right.
buying a bottle, a
Mm-hmm.
$60 bottle every week. And so my friend's like, you need to really take the tincture to address the root cause of your sciatica, which is inflammation. But I was afraid, again, I was afraid to take it. And so I started taking it. And that's when I noticed that I was waking up less pain. And so I started to take it more to a point where I wasn't on ibuprofen anymore after less than 30 days. But what I also noticed, what I found out later, is that I also have fibromyalgia. And so that's why my whole body, in addition to the back pain, why I have soreness and pain and fatigue and all these things. And so my fibromyalgia is triggered when I'm stressed. And so, I have a very stressful life. And so I noticed that the CBD helps manage the stress. So I also noticed that my flare-ups of fibro were much less. Like I knew I was stressed, but I didn't have that same symptoms I used to have before. And lastly, I can't remember to say this in public, I'm perimenopausal.
Yeah.
And it's helped.
Truth hurts.
It's helped with my perimenopausal symptoms. Like my partner would notice, like he'll say it lovingly, honey, did you forget to take your tincture today? I'm like, why?
Glowing eyes. Yeah. And so you are noticing, because I think with, women that a little bit older, we're noticing those changes. And so I wondered about that. Not real fond of the whole saying that phrase either. I talked to someone recently and they're like, Corey, you need to embrace it. And I'm like, I'll get there. Right now, all I can think of is, wait, wasn't I 25 last week? Yeah. How is it
I still
that I'm
feel
47?
Like I'm 25. Like
my mind is definitely 25.
I need everything to catch up or to,
or regress. But you're, so you're noticing with regards to perimenopause that the CBD is assisting you in how you feel mentally, emotionally, and physically.
For sure. I mean, especially like during pandemic, it was a really tough time for us. And I knew that I was super stressed in addition to, personally and professionally. And also when I first opened the store, my partner had a really bad gout flare up. He was bedridden for almost a month. So literally I had to clean and get the store ready like by myself. And so then I was worried about him and I knew my stress level. And like I actually had to stop and I'm like, I'm okay. Like it was weird for me to know that I knew I was super stressed. And yet I didn't feel that stress that I used to have before.
So if someone is using, say, like you said, a full spectrum CBD tincture, which by the way, I'm going to have you explain what a tincture is in just a second here. Let's say they're in a business environment where they get drug tested periodically. Is that going to show up as an issue in a drug test?
A full spectrum, yes, because it does have a small amount of THC.
Okay. Now, is there anything that they could take that would not?
Broad spectrum or CBD isolate.
Okay. And those would be okay and they wouldn't show up in a drug test?
Correct.
Okay. That's just good to know. I want, people that are going to be out there looking for something.
And that's later they decided, because the test that we have is specifically for THC. Right. Because it alters your mind. And so.
Okay. So then let's say I am walking into your shop or your online shop, because I know you're online as well as you have a brick and mortar. And I'm like, look, I'm 47. I have the typical aches and pains, but I'm also high stress, occasional anxiety and depression. What would be the first thing you would tell me? Hey, let's take a look at this first. What product would you say first?
Well, I would probably ask them if they are open to ingesting or consuming versus not. And so we do have topicals that can help with all of that. But so I explained to them the difference. So, for instance, I'll ask are you open to consuming to either edible or the tincture, which is sublingual. And they'll say, if they say yes, then I will explain that. If they're not, then I will show them the topical products that we have that will help with stress. We have the roll-on, the bath bombs, and other things. And so it's definitely a lot of education. So explain all the differences, and I let them decide at the end.
Now, what is a tincture?
So tincture is it's a sublingual, so it's a drop, and
Okay. So it's a liquid.
yes, and it's taken. So you basically put it under your tongue, and you leave it there for about 30 to 40 seconds, and you swallow. So by leaving it in your under your tongue for 30 to 40 seconds, it gets into your bloodstream, and then by swallowing, then it goes through the digestive system. So it almost like hits your body twice. And so versus an edible, it just goes through your digestive system. Tincture, well, for the most part, depending on your source, it's just CBD and a carrier oil. So CBD can't be consumed or put on your topically directly. It has to have some type of a carrier oil. So for majority of the time, you'll find tincture CBD oil with MCT oil, which is fraction coconut oil.
Coconut oil. Right. Okay. So tell me a little bit about Malaya then. What is Malaya? What does Malaya mean? Because there's importance in the name. And then I want to know where you are and how my listeners can get in contact with you and purchase from you. Actually, you know what? There was one thing I wanted to ask about really quick. I saw on your website you had a product. I want to say it was like a lube. And so I want to know a little bit about that. Does it have CBD in it?
It has CBD. It has it's full spectrum, so it has all of the cannabinoids.
It does.
It does.
So, okay, ladies out there. Now, what would we notice if we were using this CBD? What's it called? I don't know if you call it a lube. I sound like I'm saying it super vulgar, lube. But what is it called?
Lube.
It is okay. All right. So we're really mature, by the way. So what is in it? What is the difference between, let's say, just buying, KY jelly, if I'm going to buy your CBD lube?
Well, it's just the adding cannabis into it, like it enhances, especially as we age, as we know, there's, like the symptoms, the dryness, the lack of sexual drive and things like that. And so it does have the ingredients of, similar lube where it enhances libido, your drive, and then also lubricates all at the same time. So there's the tingling, the coolness, and in addition to things that actually helps to put you in that mood.
Enhances.
So, enhances, yes. So we're actually sold out right now. I have a different formulator who is putting one together for me, and it's going to be even better than what we had before. So stay tuned.
Yes, stay tuned. We'll keep an eye on that one. So how do my guests find you online, and if they are in Northern California, your brick and mortar?
So our brick and mortar is in Alameda, 1542 Webster Street in Alameda. You can also buy online, malayabotanicals.com. And we also are in Bay Area events on the weekends.
Do you have like an event calendar on your website that shows what, or your Instagram? Because I know you have an Instagram as well. Do you have like an event calendar that lets people know in advance where you're going to be?
Yeah, it's on the website, and we also post it on Instagram.
And then how are things going for you guys with regards to COVID and the response? And has that been an issue with regards to the, going to events or having people come in?
When we first sheltered in place in March, we had just opened a store a month. And we closed down. We kind of had to, we didn't really know anything about COVID, and my partner is high risk. And so we kind of had to get more information about this before we started planning what we were going to do. And so we closed down the store. We focused on online sales. And honestly, in March, the last 2 weeks of March, our online sales, with the support of family, friends, and the community, surpassed our 2019 online sales.
That's amazing. That is so good to hear.
I'm sure it's a little bit of both, supporting us because they believe in us. And I know that because they were also stressed, and they know that our product can help them. And because I'm sure it's a little bit of both. And so we reopened in May for about a week, but then these vandalism started happening and looting in Alameda. So we closed down again for a couple weeks, and we reopened in June. And, so in June, we were kind of navigating how to make it safe for our staff and also for people to come in. And in July, it's our record sales month.
Wow.
And now we have consistent sales online at the store. And then now we're doing events consistently. And so we're doing much better.
Good. That is really, really good to hear. Nice to hear the community come together, during this time, for something like this. Yeah, that's amazing.
So grateful.
It really, really is. Yeah. Thank you so much, Pia, for coming on today. It's good to see you. Not like I said, we are childhood friends. We went to high school together, known each other since we were 14, which was just last week because we're 25 still. Anyhow, thank you so much for coming on. And everybody, I'm going to be putting all of her contact information as far as the shop, her website, and her Instagram in the show notes. So please be sure to check that out. Head to her website and grab some stuff there. I know you do some gift basket stuff too on the website as well. Thank you so much, Pia, for coming on today.
Thank you so much for having me, Corey. We appreciate it. This has been fun.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of That's Not Proper. Remember to subscribe, rate, and review That's Not Proper on whichever podcast platform you are listening on. And remember to share the episodes with friends and family as well. If you are interested in connecting with Pia at Malaya Botanicals, please check out the show notes. I'm going to have the links to all her information there. And remember to come back for the next episode of That's Not Proper.